Trukhanov has been stripped of Ukrainian citizenship. Who else joined the company of the mayor of Odesa, whom we will soon most likely be able to call former? I'll tell you more about in the upcoming segment. I'm Solomia Vitvitska. This is TSN. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, watch the broadcast, and be sure to comment on what you found most interesting. Here are a few of today's topics. Attack on the hospital.
One woman was transferred to a neighboring hospital and 6 others received assistance on the spot.
Why did the Russians target the Kharkiv hospital? And we begin with the situation in the regions. 2 regions are experiencing power outages due to enemy shelling. The Russians attacked civilian infrastructure in Chernihiv region with a wave of drones. A fire broke out and 36 settlements in the Nizhyn district were left without electricity. Currently, electricians are working to restore power. The occupiers also struck a private enterprise in Novorossiversk with drones. And at night, they attacked critical infrastructure facilities in the Kirovohrad region. 5 settlements were left without power. Due to the consequences of the attack, Ukrzaliznytsia announced changes to the schedule of suburban trains. Houses were damaged at the sites of the strikes. The fires have already been extinguished. And in Donetsk region, part of which had been without power for almost 2 days, electricity has finally been restored to homes. However, a number of suburban trains are running with delays due to the lack of voltage in the network. And the Russians continue to destroy residential neighborhoods. 8 guided aerial bombs were dropped on Kostiantynivka, and 3 drones struck as well. 2 city residents did not survive the enemy attack, and 4 more were wounded, with 1 injured in Lyman. The Russians hit the city with an aerial bomb and a drone. The Russians shelled Kharkiv with guided aerial bombs, KBs. The attack happened late in the evening when people were going to bed. More than 50 people were injured. The hospital grounds were hit and energy facilities were also targeted. As a result, part of Kharkiv is currently without power. A TSN film crew is working at the scene and our Yulia Boyko will provide all the details.
The Russians are once again striking Kharkiv with guided aerial bombs, this time targeting a hospital where over 100 patients were present at the time of the attack. The blast wave shattered windows, damaged buildings, and dozens of people suffered injuries and acute stress reactions. The occupiers carried out the airstrike at around 10 o'clock in the evening. Preliminary reports indicate that 3 guided aerial bombs were launched. One of them hit the hospital grounds. The powerful blast wave damaged nearby buildings and civilian businesses.
We provide prosthetics and supply rehabilitation equipment to people with disabilities. The guided aerial bombs hit because when we arrived here at 12, everything was destroyed. We can only get into the building through the windows because all the doors are blocked. The Russians don't understand where, what, or how. They don't care who they bring this misery to.
The greatest destruction is at the hospital. In the building where patients with endocrine diseases were treated, the windows and doors were blown out. At the moment of the strike, there were over 100 people inside. They were evacuated, but as a result of the strike, more than 50 patients were still injured. Most of them have acute stress reactions, but there are also wounded.
1 woman was transferred to a neighboring hospital and 6 people received assistance on the spot. There are currently no severe or critical cases to report. These injuries are primarily superficial cuts to the skin, which were caused by fragments of broken glass. At this present moment, there are absolutely no patients located within this building. All have been transferred to other departments of our hospital.
The blast wave also damaged power lines. Because of this, several districts of Kharkiv were left without electricity.
Approximately 30,000 subscribers are without power. Our municipal services and energy workers are working to restore electricity to the residents of Kharkiv as quickly as possible. They are targeting the entire energy sector, generation, transformer substations, and power transmission networks. In other words, they are doing everything possible to cut off the power supply.
At the sites of the strikes, energy workers are currently on the ground, continuously supported by utility workers and rescuers. They are clearing away glass debris, restoring temporary shelters, and preparing buildings to seal up the shattered windows. Yulia Boyko and Oleksiy Bugayenko, Kharkiv, TSN 1+1.
The number of people injured in today's shelling of Kherson has increased. There are now 4 of them. It has become known that an infant was among the injured. She is a 1.5-month-old girl. A Russian shell hit the house where she was. 3 other city residents suffered blast injuries and 1 woman was killed. And in the morning, the Russians targeted a humanitarian mission. They struck with artillery and drones at 4 UN trucks. 1 vehicle burned down, another was seriously damaged. The remaining vehicles managed to escape the attack. These were white cargo trucks with markings indicating they were carrying humanitarian aid. Tons of cargo were destroyed. Miraculously, there were no casualties. A little earlier, an enemy drone attacked a city taxi. 2 people were injured in the explosion. And in the village of Novozoraya, a local farmer was blown up by an explosive device. He drove his tractor over a mine. President Zelensky responded to the shelling of Kharkiv and other cities. On his Telegram channel, he posted a video and photos showing the aftermath of the bombing of a hospital in Kharkiv. He called the strike, which injured 60 people, a terrorist attack. Civilians in the energy sector are the main targets of the Russians, Zelensky writes. He called on partners from the US and Europe to provide Ukraine with enough air defense systems to close the sky to missiles, drones, and guided bombs. Only force can make the Russians stop, the president wrote. The president has signed a decree terminating the citizenship of Odesa Mayor Trukhanov. This was reported during the national telethon, citing sources in the president's office. The official decree has not yet been published on the president's office website. However, immediately after a meeting with the head of the security service of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky himself wrote the following on his social media, and I quote, "The presence of Russian citizenship among certain individuals has been confirmed. Relevant decisions regarding them have been prepared." The decree was signed, and later the security service released details about the revocation of Trukhanov's Ukrainian citizenship. According to the investigation, on December 5, 2015, already after the war had begun, Trukhanov obtained a foreign passport from the occupying country. It was issued for a period of 10 years and is currently a valid document. However, his internal Russian passport was confiscated by a court in the Moscow region in 2017. Although in additional clarifications it is stated that the cancellation or renunciation of such a document, and I quote, "does not deprive one of citizenship of the Russian Federation." The SBU published photos of these documents on its Telegram channel. The day before, a petition demanding the termination of Hennadiy Trukhanov's Ukrainian citizenship appeared on the website of the President of Ukraine. In addition to the Russian passport, the officials there mention how he publicly defended monuments with Russian symbols. The petition also refers to the tragedy in Odesa on September 30th, when people died due to bad weather and inadequate warnings about the danger. In less than a day, this petition gathered the required 25,000 signatures. At the same time, according to Suspilne, along with Trukhanov, citizenship was also revoked from 3-term MP Oleksandrivsk and former Ukrainian ballet artist Serhiy Polunin. Hennadiy Trukhanov himself has already responded to the president's decision. He denied having a Russian passport and stated that he is preparing lawsuits for Ukrainian courts and the European Court of Human Rights.
Are you planning to leave Odesa to leave Ukraine?
I am not planning to leave either Odesa or Ukraine.
And will you run in the next elections if you are removed now?
But why did they do this? Because if I am stateless, I can't run for office, because they are afraid that I would run and win the elections.
And what do you think about the revocation of Ukrainian citizenship from these individuals? Be sure to write your thoughts in the comments under this broadcast on YouTube, and of course like the video and subscribe to the channel. In the meantime, I will continue with the TSN broadcast. An FPV drone launched by Russian terrorists has, for the first time, reached the center of Kharkiv, according to the Institute for the Study of War. The occupiers are trying to expand the area of impact. Thus, an enemy drone was detected in the Kyivsky district of Kharkiv. It is likely that Russian forces used another UAV carrier to transport the FPV drone a distance of 10 to 20 kilometers from the target. Meanwhile, fierce battles are raging at the front. The Pokrovsk direction remains the hottest spot. According to the latest data from the General Staff, Ukrainian assault units are indeed managing to advance in this sector. This refers to more than 1.5 kilometers in certain areas. In addition, the Phoenix border guards thwarted an enemy offensive near the settlements of Volodymyrivka and Shakov in the Donetsk region. The day before, the Russians tried to break through the defensive line there and land troops. However, the Ukrainian armed forces managed to destroy a tank and 3 enemy armored vehicles. At least as much equipment was partially disabled, and about 50 occupiers were wounded or eliminated. Tomahawks and consistent cooperation, these are the topics Volodymyr Zelensky will discuss with Donald Trump. The meeting is scheduled for Friday. In Washington, the president will also meet with senators and congressmen, as well as with representatives of defense and energy companies. The Ukrainian delegation has already arrived in the United States. It is headed by Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko, National Security and Defense Council Secretary Rustem Umerov, and Head of the President's Office Andriy Yermak. They will discuss strengthening Ukraine's air defense, increasing strike capabilities, support for the energy sector, as well as new sanctions against Russia. Over the past 2 days, there have been active contacts between the Ukrainian and American presidents. Zelensky and Trump had 2 phone conversations. The main topic is military aid to Ukraine, including the possibility of supplying Tomahawk missiles. How many there will be is still unknown. However, the president explained who could finance the deliveries. NATO could purchase them and transfer them to Ukraine, or they could be acquired through the Mega Deal program. This is still being negotiated. The day before in Kyiv, the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaja Kallas, spoke about military and financial support for Ukraine, as well as energy security. Brussels intends to allocate about 10 million euros for a special tribunal for the aggressor country and 6 million for the victims of the Kremlin's war crimes. The High Representative also stated that the EU is working on allocating 100 million euros for generators, shelters and equipment for Ukraine during the winter period. Our correspondent Oksana Tkachenko spoke with Kaja Kallas.
High Representative Kallas, you visit Ukraine quite often, and now you have come to Kyiv at a time when Russia has once again resorted to its favorite tactic against the civilian population. They are attacking the energy infrastructure, including gas facilities, to plunge us into darkness and cold during the winter period. How can the European Union help us get through this?
We know that 93% of Russian strikes have targeted civilian sites. What are we doing on our side? We are working on a winter package to provide real assistance with energy so that there will be neither cold nor darkness in winter. Of course, we are also increasing pressure on Russia to make it stop this war by introducing the 19th package of sanctions, targeting its energy finances so that they have no means to continue waging this war. We are also working with third countries, our partners, who also want to help Ukraine with its energy infrastructure so that Ukraine can truly be resilient.
In recent weeks, EU countries have faced numerous airspace violations, and your home country Estonia as well. Are you satisfied with the response to these incidents within the EU? Should all these drones and aircraft have been shot down?
Well, we have to understand why Russia is doing this. It is doing this for 2 reasons. First, to test our unity and our response. And second, to sow fear in our society, as if to say, look, the war is coming closer to your territory, so stop helping Ukraine. I truly think that our response should be very firm, and indeed, it is quite firm. We are absolutely not afraid, and we will continue to steadfastly support Ukraine.
Why is Russia launching drones at NATO countries? What threats does her native Estonia face? Can the EU reign in Hungary? And other details that Kaja Kallas shared with Oksana Tkachenko, watch the full interview on TSN's YouTube channel. Leave your comments. And now I continue with our broadcast. Provide Ukraine with long-range weapons and lift restrictions on their use. A resolution with such a call was adopted by the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. Although this document is not legally binding, it always serves as a basis for real political decisions, says Chernihiv, head of Ukraine's permanent delegation to the alliance. Members of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly emphasized that Kyiv should be granted the right to strike legitimate targets on Russian territory with Western weapons. In addition, the Assembly called for providing Ukraine with more air defense systems, counter-drone and electronic warfare systems, aircraft, armored vehicles, and intelligence information. The resolution also includes provisions on joint arms production, strengthening sanctions, and using the frozen assets of the aggressor country. And as soon as tomorrow, alliance members will gather for a meeting in the Ramstein format. On the same day, a meeting of the Ukraine-NATO Council at the level of defense ministers will take place. Denis Shmyhal will be present on behalf of Ukraine. The Pentagon Chief Pete Hegsted and the Alliance Secretary General Mark Rutte are also expected to attend. Earlier, Volodymyr Zelensky stated that Kyiv's priorities at tomorrow's Ramstein meeting are the provision of air defense systems and the procurement of American weapons. An explosion in a house in Italy claimed the lives of 3 police officers. At least 15 people were injured. The detonation likely occurred at the moment when police officers opened the door of the house, which was filled with gas. Locals say the explosion could be heard even 5 kilometers away. Video from the scene shows that the building has been reduced to a pile of rubble. The police officers were supposed to evict 3 residents due to deaths. Previous attempts ended with the residents threatening to blow themselves up. 2 suspects were detained at the scene, and the 3rd was arrested after a search. The Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs welcomed the release of the last Israeli hostages who were held in the Gaza Strip by Hamas militants. The diplomatic agency expressed support for international efforts aimed at establishing peace in the Middle East, and also stated that it is precisely such diplomacy of strength and determination that can bring wars to an end. Therefore, they hope that the same kind of international pressure will be applied in Russia's war against Ukraine. Earlier, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, during his speech at the Middle East Conference in Sharm el-Sheikh regarding the ceasefire in Gaza, called for an end to the war in Ukraine and expressed hope that the involvement of the US president would help achieve peace. And Trump himself, speaking in the Knesset, stated that after the fighting in the Middle East ends, attention should be focused on the Russian-Ukrainian war. With the participation of the leaders of the USA, Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey, and in the presence of many European leaders, a historic agreement to cease fire in the Gaza Strip was signed yesterday in Sharm el-Sheikh. As part of the agreement, Hamas returned the hostages it had held for more than 2 years. However, the bodies of 24 hostages who died in Hamas captivity have still not been found. Israel, in turn, released nearly 2,000 Palestinians. Israeli forces also committed to withdraw. In addition, international representatives have agreed to hold a conference on Gaza's reconstruction in the coming days.
This momentous breakthrough
This important breakthrough that we are celebrating here today is more than just the end of the war in Gaza. With God's help, this will become a new beginning for the entire beautiful Middle East. From now on, we can build a region that is strong, stable, prosperous, and united in rejecting the path of terror. As I have already said, I intend to be a partner in ensuring a better future. You will work with the United States, and we will ensure that the Middle East is safe.
to be a safe and secure place.
Meanwhile, public executions have begun in the Gaza Strip. Several media outlets report that Hamas has executed several Palestinians whom they suspect of collaborating with Israel. The video was posted on social media, but the footage is too sensitive and requires further verification. Meanwhile, the terrorist group claims that it is carrying out such purges to restore security and eliminate lawlessness after the withdrawal of the Israeli army. The BBC, citing local sources, writes, "Such public executions intensify fear and division among the residents of the Gaza Strip. The executions are carried out without any evidence or trials. It is already known that at least 30 people have been killed as a result of the militants' actions." Many analysts believe that Hamas is taking advantage of the situation to settle scores with rivals in the region and silence its critics. According to Donald Trump's peace plan, Hamas militants were supposed to lay down their arms and leave the region, transferring power to a transitional administration under international supervision. However, this has not happened yet. They were given temporary permission to patrol the Gaza Strip. Whether it will be possible to peacefully negotiate the transfer of power with Hamas remains in question. Venezuela is closing its embassy in Norway, all because the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado. She was announced as the winner last week for her long-standing efforts in the fight for democracy. Oslo has already responded to Venezuela's decision. They stated that they regret this, as they wanted to support dialogue. At the same time, they noted that the Nobel Prize is independent from the Norwegian government. And it is the committee that must choose the right Nobel Peace Prize laureate, and Maria Corina Machado is a worthy winner. In addition to Norway, Venezuela has decided to close its embassy in Australia as well. Instead, it will open new embassies in two brotherly African countries, Burkina Faso and Zimbabwe. They explained this as a strategic redistribution of resources. EU countries have unveiled a new entry system for their territories. Airports in Schengen zone states have already installed special self-service machines for this purpose, called kiosks. There you will need to scan your face and the fingerprints of 4 fingers on your right hand, and a biometric passport will also be required. Checks will take place not only at airports, but also at road border crossings, railway stations and ports. For example, at Rome's Fiumicino airport, there are already about 200 of these machines. Children under 12 are not required to provide fingerprints, but they must go through the other registration steps. The system itself has been in operation since October 12th and applies to all countries that are not EU members. That means it applies to Ukrainians as well. And the data collection will continue gradually until April 10th of next year and may cause minor queues at the borders. The new system aims to eventually completely replace manual stamping. This decision will also help prevent illegal migration, combat fraud, and address those who exceed the maximum allowed stay in EU countries.
It all starts with pre-registration at the so-called kiosks you see behind me. We are talking about full automation, which allows for the collection of all biometric and personal data of the passenger, including a facial image and fingerprints. The kiosk will also provide a questionnaire with simple questions to determine the reasons for the passenger's entry into the Schengen area, how much money they have with them, whether they have credit cards, as well as the purpose and destination of their trip. After filling out the questionnaire, passengers can proceed to booths where a police officer will be waiting for them, or use electronic turnstiles, where border control will be automatically carried out using national Schengen level and Interpol databases.